This is why you should always keep pictures of your parents. A little girl named Olivia who lived a very quiet life decided to check her homework assignments that were posted online. The teacher posted that they needed to write down their favorite memory with their family as well as bring a photograph. Olivia then writes about how her and her mom play dolls every night in the basement before bed and that she has a lot of fun doing so. She finishes her paragraph and then looks in her dad's drawer for a photograph of mom. She only found pictures of her mom from high school but decided to use it anyway. Olivia goes to bed and wakes up the next morning. Once she arrives at school, the teacher then says, "Let's start presenting our project." Then the teacher called Olivia's name to present. Olivia then begins to read about how her and her mom play dolls every night and then pulls out the photograph. As soon as Olivia pulled out the photograph, her teacher's face goes numb. She then asks Olivia if she can take a closer look at the photograph. She then recognized her mom as one of her previous students. Then the teacher asks, "Where did you get this photo?" Olivia says, "My dad keeps them in his drawer." The teacher, shocked, sits down Olivia and pulls out an old newspaper. The newspaper headline, "Local high school teen murdered, boyfriend gone missing." The teacher then looks at Olivia and says, "Your mom has been dead for 14 years. This is the story about the blind woman who could see ghosts. So this girl who was blind at birth lived with her father on a single ranch house. So because she was blind at birth, she had spatial awareness. Pretty much she knew how far apart everything was based on what she touched. One day in the living room, the blind woman was talking to a ghost named Ellie. So Ellie said to the blind woman her name and asked her why her face was so messed up. So the blind woman then asked, "Why is my face messed up? What's wrong with it?" And at that point, the father then heard the conversation and snagged the blind woman out of the room and said, "Who were you talking to?" The blind woman then replied, "I was speaking to Ellie," and then the father laughed. Over the course of the next few months, the blind woman started speaking to over 13 ghosts. And each time she would speak, her father would get very, very upset at her for speaking to ghosts. So one day, the blind woman fell in the kitchen and had to call the paramedics. And once the paramedics arrived there, she asked, "Can my dad come with me to the hospital?" The paramedic then replied, "Your dad's been dead for 6 years. Make sure to like for a part 2.
Today we're going to go over the scariest things kids have ever said and confirm the fact that I will never have kids, and I'm going to show you why you shouldn't either. Let's go. Also, it's like 100 degrees in this bathroom, so let's do this quick. A mother and a son were on a dark, snowy road on the final leg of a 16-hour trip they were taking together. Her son was in the back seat when he suddenly got very restless and threw a blanket over his face and said, "I don't want to get glass in my face." The mom, of course, was like, "What are you talking about?" Understandably, and then a truck pulling a snowmobile went out in front of them and got into a car crash that totaled 3 cars. So I mean, he didn't get any glass on his face. This is probably the most bizarre one I've ever told you guys. A family had a cat who gave birth to stillborn kittens, and the son decided to ask the mom, "Hey, can we make crosses for the kittens?" And the mom was like, "That's a good idea, let's do it." So they began to make the crosses, and then all of a sudden the son was like, "Are those big enough?" To which the mom was like, "Yeah, of course they're big enough. They don't need to be huge, just for kittens." So the son replied, "Don't they need to be bigger if we're gonna nail them to the crosses?" Like and follow for more.
This is the creepy story of the red dot. So one night a girl was sleeping when a giant spider crawled across her face. It stopped for a few minutes on her left cheek and then walked away. She woke up the next morning and looked in the mirror. She noticed a small red spot on her cheek but didn't think much of it. She went to school like usual. But when she came home from school, the red dot doubled in size and became a boil. So she booked an appointment with her doctor, but the doctor couldn't see her until the next day. She tried not to worry about it and went to bed. When she woke up the next morning, she screamed. Her boil burst open and there were thousands of little spiders crawling all over her.
This is why you should never play hide and seek. A mom decided to play hide and seek with her 2 kids. The mom began counting, "Ready or not, here I come." She begins searching the downstairs kitchen because she knows that they hide there every single time. As she's walking to the kitchen, she starts saying, I wonder where they are." She looks under the table and sees they aren't there, which is kind of odd. She knew they were too scared to go into the basement alone, but she decided to check anyway. They weren't there either. She began to panic. The mom then says, "Jordan, Casey, come out now. Mommy's not playing anymore." There was no answer. Panic really begins to set in. She decides to call 911 and reaches an operator. She tells the operator what's wrong and the operator sends an officer to her house. Once the officer arrives, he says, "Don't worry, we will find them." As she's sitting in the living room, she hears giggling and laughing and hears a closet door slam upstairs. She sprints upstairs and says, "Jordan, Casey, you worried me sick." She opened the closet door and nobody was there. While all of this is going on, she hears the doorbell ring. She runs downstairs and finds the officer holding Jordan and Casey. The officer says they were hiding in the shed out back. Then Jordan looks at mommy and says, "Why were you telling us to stay in the shed?"